So I say that, I know it's a lot harder than it sounds, but when we get to that point of acceptance, I feel like you find so much more freedom in that.
You have power.
Yeah.
You're not the victim
Yes,
anymore.
exactly.
So, and I think like version 2.0 for those that are listening to this, if you want to take this a step further in your healing, A Course in Miracles does a really good job on what forgiveness is. It's like their take on this is nothing was really done to you because we're all one. You know, so which is really tough. That's advanced to get to understanding, you know, that the shadow side of people are just as your son is just as loving to you, your uncle was loving in his own hurt way. You know, so it's a really advanced teaching, but it's so freeing because I had a really traumatic childhood, lots of issues, was raised in a cult, had lots of problems, was homeless for a long time. And I had to work through all of that process and then finally realized that in this meat suit at this time, this was my learning lesson. I needed to go through this to be where I'm at now. And I'm so happy I went through it all. I needed all of that to evolve to the point of where I'm at now and understanding, you know, and the love that I have for those people that hurt me, you know, and I think that's where the alchemy happens, you know, is in that process of healing. And I want to get into, because that's a lot of your work. If somebody's starting, you know, they can work with you and there's courses and we'll get into your website. But what advice would you give to someone who's just starting to explore? I have a lot of people that say, like, I don't know where to start. Do I read the Bible? Do I read the Quran? Do I read the Course in Miracles? Well, you know, where do I start? How do you tell people when they want to start exploring their spirituality?
I tell them just to start anywhere, to be honest with you. You know, I feel like spirituality is it's not a religion. It's an essence of your soul. So what speaks to you? You know, does the Bible speak to you? Maybe just parts of the Bible speak to you. And then, you know, maybe you could move on to exploring other spirituality books to see what information in there resonates with your truth. As you continue to explore and learn and gain knowledge, you'll start to get a little bit more clear about what you believe to be true, because you and I have different beliefs about what is true for us and what's not. And so does everybody else in this world. So there's I think, an easy thing that new learners get sucked into is they will follow a specific teacher and then believe everything that teacher says without question.
Yes, 100%. Right.
So I would always encourage people to ask questions of yourself, ask questions of the teacher, ask questions wherever you can, because there's so much knowledge out there and there's no like right or wrong. Okay. There's just a insane amount of information for you to be able to choose what you want to believe and what you don't want to believe.
Was there a lot of baggage with Buddhism with you, with your family coming from Vietnam, or is that something that you embrace now?
Well, I was raised Catholic, and yes.
Yeah, I remember that. But I mean, as far as like if you go to Da Nang, or, you know, that's where all the tourists go. But if you go to these places in Vietnam, I mean, it's just everywhere you see. You know, that
has never affected us in any way. Yeah. I feel like Catholicism is, at least in Vietnam, is common enough that there's no, not that there's no separation, but it's not like a big deal. It's not like you're Catholic.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting because I talked to a lot of Filipinos and they're all Catholic, you know, of course, because of what happened. I think most Filipinos are Catholic, but it's really interesting to see how different cultures have to deal with the trauma and also the religion. So when somebody starts out, like I've had people say, well, I can't do the Christian because I was in churches. And like you said, you know, go where your soul will guide you. Your higher self will guide you in the direction.
Just because you have a religion doesn't mean that you can't explore spirituality. When I first started out, I thought that I had to leave the church. You know, I'm like, if I'm learning all these spiritual things, then I think I need to leave the church. And I'm like, I just made it so extreme, and it doesn't have to be that way. And you don't have to leave your spouse either when you become more spiritual. You know, if you and your spouse are at two different levels, you don't have to leave your partner because you're growing more spiritually. Obviously, if you guys aren't getting along, that's a whole different story.